Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Cameron Blake escaped to a quiet lakeside cabin, he thought he'd left chaos behind. But when a smug HOA president tried to bully him off his own land, Cameron didn't just fight back. He launched a war of wills that would shake the entire neighborhood to its core. After the divorce and walking away from my tenured position, I wasn't looking for some grand adventure or a flashy new chapter. I just wanted peace. A place where no one asked questions, no committee meetings, no department gossip, and definitely no one telling me to be more of a team player. When I found the listing for a 2.5-acre lot tucked away near a lake with just one dirt road leading to it and nothing but trees and water surrounding it, I knew I was home. The house itself was nothing fancy, an old 2-bedroom cabin with creaky floorboards and a tin roof that rattled when the wind got feisty. But it was mine, my little corner of quiet. I'd spend my days consulting for universities on excavation reports, cataloging ancient pottery fragments, and drinking far too much black coffee while watching birds bicker over the feeder on my deck. So, when a silver Lexus pulled up to the edge of my property on only my third morning there, I figured it was a lost realtor, or maybe some local trying to sell firewood. What I didn't expect was a man in khakis, loafers, and a branded fleece vest with Oak Ridge Estates HOA stitched over his heart like a badge of honor. "Cameron Blake?" he asked, smiling with the confidence of someone who never heard the word no. "That's me," I said, eyeing his clipboard like it might bite. "Howard Lewis," he said, extending his hand. "President of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. Just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." I didn't take his hand. "Thanks. But I'm not actually in Oak Ridge. My parcel isn't under your HOA. His smile twitched just a little. "Technically, yes, but since you use our road to access your property, we consider you part of the greater Oak Ridge community." "Consider me whatever you like," I said, "but I'm not signing up for anything." He didn't flinch, just flipped a few pages on his clipboard and launched into a well-rehearsed spiel about community upkeep, shared responsibility, and how a small monthly contribution would ensure the road remains safe and beautiful for all residents. I cut him off. "I've read the plat maps. My easement gives me right of access. I'm not paying HOA dues for land I don't belong to. And I sure as hell don't need a newsletter telling me what color to paint my shutters." Howard chuckled like I'd just said something adorable. "Oh, it's not about control. It's about unity. We all work together to keep Oak Ridge exceptional." "Look," I said, stepping between him and my porch. "You've made your pitch. I'm saying no. I came here to get away from all this HOA nonsense. No offense, but I'm not interested in being part of any group that elects a guy in loafers to lord over mailboxes and lawn heights." The smile dropped, just for a second. But it was enough. "Well," he said, drawing himself up, "we'll be in touch." "I'd really prefer you weren't." Howard left, but not before taking a long look at my driveway, like he was measuring it for something. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just another overreaching HOA suit trying to strong-arm a new neighbor into joining their cult of conformity. I went back inside, brewed another cup of coffee, and figured that was the end of it. Turns out it was only the beginning. It started with silence. A strange kind of silence, the kind that makes you pause mid-coffee sip and instinctively glance toward the window, unsure what exactly feels off, but knowing something is. I'd gotten used to the usual soundtrack of birds, distant rustling trees, and the occasional squirrel stampede across my deck. But that morning, nothing. I stepped outside and froze halfway down the porch steps. The dirt road that led to my property, the only road, mind you, was blocked, not just by a no trespassing sign or a flimsy chain. No, these people went full medieval. 2 concrete barriers, chest high, sat side by side, right across the road like they were guarding a nuclear facility. And between them, in bold, neatly stenciled letters, "Private access, HOA members only. 1,000 month road use fee." I blinked, stepped closer, reread it, and then laughed. It wasn't a funny laugh. More like a sharp bark of disbelief that turned into a muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." I walked the 100 feet up to the barricade. Sure enough, someone had poured fresh concrete overnight, still damp around the edges. On either side of the barriers, newly driven metal posts held up aluminum signs that looked professionally made. "Non-member vehicles will be towed. Access requires active HOA membership. 24/7 surveillance in effect." It didn't take a genius to guess who was behind this. I grabbed my keys and drove the truck as close as I could, then tried to maneuver around the edge of the barriers. No luck. They'd left just enough clearance to make driving impossible, but not enough for a vehicle to squeeze by. I stormed back inside, grabbed my phone, and dialed the HOA office. A woman named Dana picked up. "Hi, this is Cameron Blake," I said. "I live at the end of the road you people just blocked with 2 literal concrete walls." There was a pause. "Yes, Mr. Blake. We've updated our infrastructure in accordance with new community access policies. As you're not currently a dues-paying member of Oak Ridge Estates, continued use of the private road now requires a maintenance fee. $1,000 a month. Are you high? That's the standard rate for non-members." It was approved at the last board meeting. I gritted my teeth. You can't just block the only access to my home. If you'd like to appeal the policy, you're welcome to attend the next HOA meeting, provided you register as a guest and agree to our community standards. I hung up before I said something that'd get me arrested. An hour later, I tried to walk around the barriers to at least get my truck out. A man in a fluorescent vest, HOA logo on his chest, stopped me halfway through. "You're not authorized to pass here," he said, like he was guarding Area 51. "I live here." He didn't move. "Then you know the new terms." I went back, seething. I called the county office, hoping someone would tell me this was illegal. They logged a complaint but offered no immediate help. I wasn't surprised. By sunset, I had a backpack full of groceries slung over my shoulder and mud halfway up my jeans, because the only way to get anything to my house now involved a mile-long hike through the forest on footpaths deer had probably made. And just in case the day hadn't been surreal enough, I noticed a shiny new camera bolted to a tree near the barrier, red light blinking. They were watching me. I spent the next morning buried in boxes. After making the muddy trek back from town with a gallon of milk and my boots soaked through, I decided enough was enough. Somewhere in the disorganized mess of file folders and closing documents I'd tossed into a cabinet the day I moved in was the proof I needed. I just had to dig it out. By midday, I found it. A crinkled county-stamped document labeled Access Easement Agreement, recorded June 3, 1993. It was a scanned black-and-white copy, signed by the original landowner of Oak Ridge Estates and the previous owner of my property. The language was dry, but the meaning was clear as daylight. Perpetual right-of-way access via the existing dirt road, regardless of HOA membership. The agreement even had coordinates and parcel references, all still valid per the most recent GIS maps I'd checked during closing. It wasn't just a courtesy, it was legally binding. I scanned everything and sent it to the county clerk's office to verify its status. Less than 2 hours later, I got confirmation. Still valid, still recorded, never rescinded. Armed with that, I called a lawyer. Enter Madeline Swan, real estate attorney, direct as a shotgun blast and sharp enough to make a cactus flinch. I found her through a forum of rural landowners who'd survived HOA drama. She looked over the easement and called me back in under an hour. "They've got no legal right to block you," she said flatly. "We'll file a formal demand to remove the barriers immediately. If they don't comply, we escalate." And escalate we did. That evening, I emailed the Oak Ridge HOA a scanned copy of the easement agreement along with a cease and desist drafted by Madeline. No threats, just legal fact. I requested immediate removal of the barriers and restoration of my access rights. I gave them 72 hours to respond. Their answer came the next morning, delivered by courier, no less. It was a typed letter on HOA letterhead with G. Lewis stamped in blue ink at the bottom. The 1993 agreement in question is no longer enforceable due to procedural changes and administrative restructuring within the Oak Ridge Estates governance system. Continued access without proper HOA registration constitutes trespassing. I stared at the paper like it had just insulted my ancestors. They were pretending a legally recorded easement somehow expired because they shuffled some paperwork. Madeline was less amused. "That's complete fiction," she said. "No court will side with them, but now they've crossed into willful obstruction. Let's get it on record." We filed a formal complaint with the county circuit court that afternoon. 2 days later, I drove to the edge of the blockade to check the situation again. That's when I noticed a new addition, an industrial-grade trail cam mounted on a post above the barricades, pointed directly at the path around the barriers. The red light blinked like it was winking at me. Below it, another sign. Notice: unauthorized road usage subject to penalties, $250 per violation. So that's how they wanted to play it. If they couldn't legally keep me out, they'd try to intimidate me into giving up through fake fines and surveillance. HOA thuggery dressed up as administration. I took photos of everything. The new signs, the camera, even the fresh tire tracks showing HOA vehicles had access to come and go freely. Then I hiked back the long way again, this time not tired, not angry, focused. They wanted to test how far I'd go. They were about to find out. The next week became a test of endurance. Every day I trudged a mile through the forest to get home. Groceries, tools, even a replacement coffee grinder I'd ordered, everything had to be carried in by hand, strapped to my back like I was prepping for a winter expedition. One night, I made the mistake of trying to bring home a 5-gallon water jug. Let's just say my spine still remembers. The kicker, my mailbox now had company. Every other day, like clockwork, I'd find another envelope from Oak Ridge Estates folded neatly inside. Notice of unauthorized road usage, $250 fine. They weren't even bothering with explanations anymore. Just dates, times, and printed photo screenshots from that surveillance camera mounted on the post. Me, blurry and muddy, hauling a backpack past the barrier like some kind of road bandit. Madeline told me to ignore the fines. They're not legal. They're scare tactics, she said, but keep every single one. So I did. I made a folder labeled HOA extortion and filled it with every notice, every photo, every petty threat. The absurdity reached new heights when I got a double fine for blocking vehicular traffic because I paused for 30 seconds to wipe mud off my boots in front of the barrier. Then came the anonymous letter. No return address. Just a plain envelope shoved into the crack of my front door with the words, "Move out before this gets worse." I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Inside was a single printed page. "You're not welcome here. You're a liability. People are talking. Think about what could happen if something were to accidentally happen to your house." Subtle. I reported it to the sheriff's office, but they couldn't trace anything without fingerprints or witnesses. "Keep your cameras running," the deputy told me, "and don't engage." I bought 2 more motion sensors that afternoon. Meanwhile, Oak Ridge was stepping up their campaign. They submitted a complaint to the county, claiming I was endangering community safety by using the private road in violation of mutual interest agreements. The language was vague and intentionally misleading, like they were trying to frame me as a rogue squatter rather than a homeowner with a valid easement. The county, to their credit, didn't act on it immediately, but the HOA posted the complaint online. I found it shared in a local Facebook group. "Uncooperative resident threatens Oak Ridge security." Threatens. All because I wanted to drive to my own damn house. The next time I passed the barricade, I noticed 2 new things. First, the camera now had a solar panel rigged above it long-term surveillance. Second, a small laminated sign had been stapled to the oak tree next to the post. It read, "Non-members access denied. Violation incurs escalating penalties. Repeat offenders may be reported to law enforcement." Below that, in smaller font, "Failure to pay accumulated road usage fees may result in lien enforcement or civil action." They were threatening to put a lien on my property. Madeline nearly dropped her phone laughing when I told her. Good luck to them. That'd get tossed out of court faster than a fake Elvis marriage license. But behind the sarcasm, I could hear the tension. HOA was escalating, and Gohard Howard, as I now called him in my head, was getting bold. That night, I stood on my porch and looked out over the trees. I could hear the distant hum of traffic from the main road, but nothing else. No lights, no neighbors, just me and a house at the end of a blocked road, cut off, watched, threatened. I'd chosen this place to be alone. They were trying to make me feel isolated, but I wasn't alone. I had the law, the documents, the footage, and I was just getting started. I didn't expect an email to shift the tide, especially not one that landed in my junk folder between ads for testosterone gummies and a Nigerian inheritance scam. The subject line was simple: Oak Ridge HOA. You need to hear this. For a second, I almost deleted it, but something about the tone blunt, unpolished, like someone typing with one hand and watching their back with the other made me hesitate. The message was short. No name, no pleasantries, just, "I used to work with them. You're not crazy. They're breaking the law. I have a recording. Tell no one until you listen." Attached was an audio file. Howard, MTG, recorded.mp3. I shut the door, pulled the blinds, and played it. At first, just background noise, shuffling paper, chairs scraping against tile. Then came the voice I'd recognize anywhere. Howard Lewis mug slow-talking, always sounding like he was selling a timeshare. I don't care what his paperwork says. He insulted me to my face, made me look like an idiot in front of the board. He doesn't pay dues, he doesn't contribute, and now he wants to use our road like he's royalty? Another voice unsure. But he's got the easement. You can't just block. I'll block whatever the hell I want, Howard snapped. If he wants to keep hauling groceries through the trees like a raccoon, let him, or he pays. End of story. Silence, then a laugh. His. Smug. Cold. If he thinks he can out-stubborn me, he's got no idea who he's messing with. I'll bury him in fines until he gives up or sells. We'll just call it road maintenance. I paused the recording and stared at my laptop like it had just cursed in Latin. There it was. The real reason behind everything. Not safety. Not bylaws. Just Howard's bruised ego and a grudge with a clipboard. I forwarded the file to Madeline with the subject, Game Changer. She called in 5 minutes flat. Jesus, this is gold. Actual proof of retaliation and willful abuse of authority. We're not just talking civil court now, we're in criminal territory. By the next morning, she'd filed a supplement to our complaint. Audio evidence of targeted harassment, financial coercion, and bad faith governance. But Madeline didn't stop there. She hired a private investigator, someone she'd worked with on previous HOA fraud cases, to dig deeper into the financial side. Within 72 hours, he hit pay dirt. Turns out the road maintenance fund Howard had been referencing didn't go to any official Oak Ridge account. Instead, payments from the fake fines were being funneled through a third-party contractor, Evergreen Infrastructure, LLC. A quick corporate records search showed that Evergreen was registered to a P.O. box 2 counties over and managed by drumroll Gregory Lewis, Howard's brother. We didn't need a smoking gun. We had a flaming cannonball. Now we had motive, method, and money trail. Madeline began assembling a package for the county prosecutor. Audio files, financial records, a written affidavit from the anonymous whistleblower who, it turned out, had been a former HOA assistant secretary before abruptly quitting last year. Apparently, she'd seen too much and had had enough. That night, I sat in my living room listening to frogs croak near the lake, while the security cameras blinked around my porch like little sentinels. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about the mud on my boots or the slope in my driveway. I was thinking about Howard Lewis and how very, very badly he'd miscalculated. It started with a knock on my door at 7:30 in the morning. Not the usual polite Amazon drop-off tap. This one had weight, authority, the kind of knock that made my stomach twist, even though I hadn't done a damn thing wrong. I opened the door in sweatpants and bare feet, only to find 2 sheriff's deputies and a man in a navy blue jacket that said County Investigations in bold yellow lettering. Mr. Blake, the man asked. Detective Kerrigan, County Fraud Division. We're here regarding your complaint against the Oak Ridge Estates HOA. Behind them, a 4th person stepped in to view a tech with a handheld scanner and a Pelican case. Not exactly subtle. I let them in. Over coffee, I gave Kerrigan the short version. The easement, the barricades, the fake fines, and of course, the recording. He already had a copy of everything Madeline sent over, but wanted to hear it from me. He nodded through most of it, taking notes. We've had complaints about this HOA before, he said finally. Mostly petty stuff, but this is different. Organized obstruction of property access and potential financial fraud, that's a whole new animal. By noon, I got word from Madeline. The county had secured a warrant to search the HOA office. And by 3 o'clock, I was parked across the street from Oak Ridge Estates' cream-colored administrative building, watching uniformed officers walk out with boxes of documents, hard drives, and what looked like a very expensive espresso machine. The show drew a small crowd. A few residents lingered behind their picket fences, clutching coffee mugs like lifelines. Someone took a video on their phone and muttered, "About damn time." Howard was there too, standing on the sidewalk in a linen shirt and that same smug, unbothered expression until the investigator handed him a sealed envelope. His smile flickered. Later that evening, news spread faster than gossip at a bake sale. Local radio stations reported that Oak Ridge Estates HOA was under official investigation for possible misappropriation of community funds and obstruction of property access. That's how they phrased it. I preferred finally being held accountable for acting like a petty tyrant with a grudge and a checkbook. By the next morning, my inbox was full. Local journalists wanted interviews. Residents from surrounding neighborhoods were reaching out with their own stories about HOA harassment. Apparently, Howard had a fan club, and it was made entirely of people who wanted him gone. I didn't reply to anyone. Not yet. I forwarded everything to Madeline and went back to doing what I did best, watching and waiting. Then came the drone. I was sitting on the porch when I heard the hum. Low, deliberate, moving slow above the treetops. It wasn't one of mine. I watched as it hovered over the barricade area, circled twice, then zipped back toward Oak Ridge. Later that night, a neighbor I'd never met, older guy, maybe in his 60s, knocked on my door with a flash drive in his hand. "You don't know me," he said. "Name's Dale. I live down by the South Trail. That drone, mine, got a clear shot of the HOA office shredding papers the night before the search." I stared at him. "You recorded them destroying documents?" "Whole folder marked easement records got fed right through. Figured you might need it." I thanked him and handed it straight to Madeline. By week's end, Detective Kerrigan confirmed that tampering with records was now on the table. They were building a case. Quietly, methodically. Howard hadn't been arrested yet, but the walls were closing in, and for once the man seemed to know it. When I passed the barricade that Friday, I saw the camera was gone. Just a sheared wire and a single empty bracket bolted into the tree. No more blinking red light. Guess someone knew they were being watched now, too. The courthouse smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. I sat at the plaintiff's table in an ironed shirt I hadn't worn since my last university panel, watching Howard Lewis whisper furiously to his attorney like a televangelist trying to dodge a tax audit. He looked different now. Thinner. Paler. The smug confidence had wilted under courtroom lighting and the growing mountain of evidence we were about to dump on his head. The judge, an older woman with the kind of face that suggested zero tolerance for theatrics, called the room to order. Madeline stood with a poise that made me wonder if she moonlighted as a sniper. "Your Honor," she began, "we are here to address the unlawful obstruction of a legally established access easement, ongoing harassment, and evidence of financial fraud conducted by the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association under the direction of its president, Mr. Howard Lewis." Howard's lawyer, a gray-haired man who looked like he'd been defending sleazy HOAs since the Reagan era, rose with his own rebuttal. "Your Honor, this is a gross mischaracterization. The plaintiff has refused to comply with reasonable community standards and is seeking to exploit a decades-old agreement that no longer reflects the administrative structure of Oak Ridge Estates." The judge blinked once. "We'll let the facts determine that." And so we did. Madeline presented the easement agreement first. Then came the letters, the fines, the surveillance footage, the drone video of the midnight shredding session, the signed affidavit from Dale, my drone-owning neighbor, finally the recording. The courtroom fell silent as Howard's voice played through the speakers. "I don't care what his paperwork says. I'll bury him in fines. We'll just call it road maintenance." Howard's attorney looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. But the real gut punch came from the back of the room. A woman stood mid-50s, nervous but composed. The judge allowed her to speak after confirming her identity. Linda Harper, former treasurer of the HOA. She took the stand and, under oath, revealed that she had resigned when she discovered unauthorized transfers to Evergreen Infrastructure, the shell company Howard had created with his brother. "He said it was to keep things off the books," she said quietly, "that the official road fund would raise too many questions. When I objected, he told me to stay out of it or leave." She left, but not before copying the bank records. Records she handed over in court. Howard didn't say a word. He just stared at the table in front of him, unmoving, like he might disappear if he kept still long enough. When the judge recessed for the day, Madeline turned to me and said, "He's done. Whether he knows it yet or not, that man's finished." I stepped outside into the crisp air, surrounded by murmurs and camera flashes. A reporter tried to ask me how it felt. I ignored him. All I could think about was that barricade, that concrete line in the dirt that Howard thought made him king of the hill. Tomorrow, we'd start tearing it down. The morning after the hearing, I woke to the sound of tires on gravel. Not the usual crunch of my delivery guy, either. This was heavier, slower. I looked out the window and saw two unmarked cruisers parked just outside the Oak Ridge Estates admin office. the same building that had, until recently, doubled as Howard's little empire. Within minutes, the front door opened. 2 deputies escorted Howard out in cuffs. He didn't fight, didn't shout, didn't even try to look indignant. Just walked stiffly, jaw clenched, eyes down. Someone across the street started clapping. I didn't recognize them, but I appreciated the sentiment. Charges came down fast. 3 counts: obstruction of access to private property, fraudulent financial practices, and retaliatory misuse of HOA authority. No bail posted yet. The county prosecutor made it clear they intended to pursue the case to the full extent of the law. The HOA board scrambled like a beehive someone had taken a bat to. 2 members resigned within 48 hours. One gave a weepy statement to the press, claiming they'd been kept in the dark. Another tried to blame Linda, the former treasurer, until records showed she'd submitted multiple concerns that were never addressed. Oak Ridge called an emergency meeting, open to all residents. This time, I was invited officially. I didn't plan on going, but Madeline insisted. "Sometimes justice needs a witness," she said. "Besides, it'll piss them off." She wasn't wrong. The meeting was tense. Folding chairs in a cramped rec room, angry residents demanding answers. The interim board trying to read from a prepared statement while people interrupted with shouts like, "Where's our money?" and "How the hell did this go on for so long?" I sat quietly in the back until someone pointed at me. "That's him. That's the guy they blocked." Dozens of eyes turned. I nodded, slow and measured. No speech, no grandstanding, just presence. The new board president, a quiet woman named Rebecca Tran, stood up and formally apologized. Not just to me, but to the entire community. Promised full audits, promised transparency, promised to rip out the cancer Howard had planted and salt the earth if she had to. Afterward, she approached me in the parking lot. "I can't undo what he did," she said, "but I'll make sure it never happens again." I believed her. Over the next week, the barricades came down. First the signs, then the concrete blocks. A crew worked around the clock. I stood on my porch with a thermos of coffee and watched it all disappear like a fever breaking. The camera was gone. The threat was gone. All that remained was a road and freedom to use it. Courtrooms are strange places. Sterile, quiet, heavy, with the kind of tension you can't really name but feel in your bones. Even after everything, the recording, the arrest, the dismantled barriers, I still felt that tension crawling under my skin as I sat at the plaintiff's table, watching the judge flip through her notes like she was reading bedtime stories made of legal landmines. Howard wasn't there. His lawyer showed up alone, trying to look composed, but he had the twitchy energy of a man who'd already written off the case and was just hoping to limit the damage. The seats behind us were packed. Oak Ridge residents, press. Even Dale, my drone-owning neighbor, wearing a flannel shirt and chewing gum like he was watching a movie. The judge began without preamble. In review of the evidence provided documented easement agreements, audio recordings of targeted harassment, sworn witness testimony, and confirmed misuse of HOA funds, this court finds the actions of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association to be in direct violation of Mr. Blake's legal right of access. She didn't pause for effect. She didn't need to. The easement agreement of 1,993 remains legally binding. The obstruction of that easement constituted a violation of civil property law and posed unreasonable hardship on the plaintiff. Furthermore, the collection of unauthorized fines and surveillance constituted an abuse of private governance authority. She turned a page. The court orders the HOA to issue a formal apology, permanently cease any enforcement actions against Mr. Blake, and pay a total of $120,000 in damages, including punitive damages, legal fees, and compensation for hardship endured. There it was. I didn't grin, didn't cheer. I just exhaled. For the first time in months, the air didn't taste like tension. After the session, reporters swarmed. I gave them nothing. Dale winked at me on the way out and muttered, "Drinks on you now, Professor." Later that night, Madeline and I sat on my porch drinking scotch out of mismatched mugs. She was still smiling when she leaned back and said, "You realize this sets precedent. They'll put this in legal blogs, case studies. The HOA that tried to gatekeep a forest." I raised my mug. To every stubborn bastard who ever read the fine print. That weekend, I got the check, 6 figures and some change, delivered by certified mail in an envelope that still smelled like stale printer toner and bitter regret. HOA letterhead. Same logo Howard used to wear like a badge of honor. Now it just looked hollow. I deposited it the same day, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. The asphalt still smelled fresh when I took the first drive down my new road. It curved gently through the edge of my property, cutting around the trees like it had always belonged there. No gates, no cameras, no smug HOA president standing at the end with a clipboard and a condescending smile. Just quiet. The construction had taken 2 weeks. I hired a small local crew guys who drank gas station coffee and didn't ask stupid questions. They worked fast, didn't complain about the terrain, and even helped me clear out a few fallen branches near the shoreline. When the final layer of sealant dried, I installed the sign myself. A simple wooden post, a metal plate, black letters on white. Private road access permitted only to those who know how to act like an adult. A few of the Oak Ridge folks stopped by during the build. Not the board members, of course. Most of them were too busy pretending they hadn't been complicit, but regular people, residents, curious neighbors. One woman brought banana bread. A retired couple from 2 lots over asked if they could use the new road in case of an emergency. I told them sure, as long as they didn't mind the occasional sarcastic signpost. Then Rebecca Tran came. She drove up in a dented Subaru, stepped out in jeans and hiking boots, and offered a plain envelope with an embossed HOA seal on the front. Inside was a printed letter no legal jargon, no doublespeak, just an apology. Sincere. Signed by every remaining board member. "We failed you," it read. "We allowed power to go unchecked, and we allowed that power to turn personal. It won't happen again." She didn't try to shake my hand, didn't ask for a photo. She just nodded and left. I respected that. A few days later, I stood by the lake with a cold beer in one hand and a sense of something rare in the other. Closure. The house looked different now. Not because it had changed, but because I had. It wasn't just a cabin anymore. It was a fortress. Not of stone, not of defense, but of stubbornness, of quiet resolve, of refusing to be bullied into submission. That night, I uploaded a video. A quick clip of the old barricade site, now empty, then a cut to the new road with the sign in full view. The caption read, "They blocked my road. I built a better one." I didn't expect much, maybe a few likes from the land rights subreddit. Instead, it blew up. TikTok, Twitter, even a few minor news outlets picked it up. Apparently, nothing resonates quite like the story of a man, a road, and a big fat middle finger to overreaching authority. The next week, someone mailed me a mug with "Jaffa Road to Revenge" printed across the side. I kept it because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, sometimes it's paved in silence.